I am dumb. I was doing this and nobody could hear me. Isn't that amazing? That's so crazy how I did that again. And I tried to make note to turn my headset sound back on, and I still didn't do it. So, last time, I didn't get very far, but I got far enough. Last time, we dealt with the fallout of our decisions that we made in Hokkaido with Lilly, and we had to ensure her that we weren't just there for the titties, and that we love her. And now we are going to the homecoming party with Akira and Lilly and Hanako. Walking up the now slightly more familiar corridor of the girls' dormitories, I can hear the faint sound of laughter coming from up ahead. It doesn't take long to identify the source of Lily's room, though the deep I still don't know how to say that word, timbre of the female voice unmistakably belongs not to her but to her sister. I rap my knuckles on the door with the usual 3 light taps, my hand barely retreating as the door swings open. Hey, Hisao. Hey. Hello, Lilly. Hanako. Hanako looks up tentatively, her hands buried in her oversized pink nightgown. From her side, Lilly turns sideways towards the direction of my voice and smiles. It would be a flagrant lie to say I dislike the sight of her in those pajamas. I catch Akira giving me a sidelong look with a knowing grin, to which I reply with a sharp glare. She takes the hint, shrugs, and walks back to the low table in the center of the room. As I go to join her, Lilly gives me a nod of greeting and starts pouring me a cup of tea. It's nice to see you again, Hanako. You've been getting around recently. Lilly wears a look of concentration as the light brown liquid, carefully measured by her finger as always, flows from the teapot into the cup. It seems Hanako has taken up helping one of the people in your class with the newspaper club. Naomi, I think? Hanako gives an affirmative nod. Even after spending about 2 months in the class, I still have trouble remembering the names of those students I rarely talk with. It takes me a few mental contortions to connect the name with a face, but I eventually remember the girl that sits beside Hanako at the back of the class. Naomi Inoue. A fairly average-looking girl except for her bleached blonde hair. Given her upbeat and straightforward personality, Naomi may have seen an opening to poach Hanako for her club while she inquired about joining one. Either way, it's nice to see Hanako broadening her horizons. When I first met her, the idea of her joining a club with anyone but Lilly would have seemed utterly laughable. That explained how busy you've been. Enjoying it? It's really interesting. As always, Hanako's far from being talkative. Some things never change, and it seems that Hanako's personality is one of them. She'll likely always be the one to shy away from being so overly social. Warned by the sound of crockery against the table as Lily gently places my drink in front of me, I thank her and take a long sip. Hanako and Lily are attending to their own, and Akira is quaffing down a mug of strong-smelling black coffee. You're a lucky bastard, Hisao. Heh. I can't help grimacing at her teasing smile, still visible around the edges of the mug, pressed to her lips. Seeing my sister in her pajamas, there's a lot of men out there who'd like to be where you are. I've seen a lot more than that of her, not that I'd admit it. She knows. Akira. Hey, I'm just teasing. She leans over to me as much as she can, whispering with a slight grin written on her face. And Hanako too, you perv. Hey, it was her idea. We both look over to her, her face turned to the ground and her hands fidgeting in the lap of her nightgown. If it's Hisao, I don't mind. This could be bad. I know Hanako's altogether too innocent to bother reading too much into such a thing, but the expression Akira directs at me is positively stormy. Akira, please. It seems Lily can sense Akira's sudden change in aura just as well as I, even without seeing it for herself. Akita slowly looks away from me, like an attack dog leashed by its owner in the nick of time. I breathe a sigh of relief. I can't think of a more appropriate time to try and change topics than around now. If you don't mind me asking, Akita, what do you do for a living? I've never seen you out of that suit. I only own one pair of clothes. Thinking about what to do with yourself after school's over, eh? I'm a lawyer. For the most part, I work in the legal department of the Japanese branch of our family's company. The most boring possible answer, I suppose. Law's a pretty dry topic for most people. Kinda. Oi, you're not supposed to agree. Lilly gives an amused giggle while holding her teacup and saucer, Hanako quickly joining her. This friendly atmosphere between everyone is something I'd missed while Lilly and Akita were on their trip. While the dealings I had with Hanako didn't help, I think just not having Lilly around changed the mood. It's nice to be back. I missed you, Hisao. And you too, Hanako. Same goes for the both of us. I'm guessing your classmates were happy to see you back. In a manner of speaking, yes. Akita's amused snorts shows she's well aware of Lily's attitude towards such figures of speech. I imagine she'd have to be given how long they've been together. Did you have fun in Scotland? For a moment I wonder why she's asking it. It having been quite a while since they came back, but then I remember everything that's happened. We've simply not had the time to look back, what with the exams and our Hokkaido trip. Lily's face goes distant for a moment, and the fact that Akita's first reaction is to look over to her sister doesn't escape me. Nonetheless, she quickly collects herself. It was nice. We hadn't met our family in such a long time, so it was a wonderful reunion. Yeah, I guess that's right. Their house being beachside was the best part, though. From her dismissive tone, I get the feeling Akita doesn't like their family as much as Lilly does. You only like that because you finally had time to play around. Just 'cause I'm the better swimmer. I don't take after the athletic side of the family, that's all. Well, you can take heart in the fact you got the height genes at least. And the bust genes. That's not really the right kind of thing to say around others. Lilly, you know better than anyone that Akita doesn't care what other people think. Though Lilly pretends to scold Akita, she does so with an unmistakable, slightly cheeky grin on her face. I doubt Akita really minds that, judging from her nonchalant expression. While I don't either, Hanako's looking down and blushing furiously beside me. The sisters' annex aside, their parents really do lead a bourgeoisie, Borgies? Rich lifestyle. It seems utterly divorced from the life that Lilly and Akita have lived until now. I suppose practicality must have made the decision for them. I have to have come from such a wealthy and well-connected lineage only adds to the almost noble air Lilly seems to have, though. It's a small wonder none of it seems to have rubbed off onto Akita. They really are as little alike as siblings could be. The only similarity seems to be their shared confidence, which can be both endearing and a headache at times. Hisao hates confidence confirmed? Most of the night continues much the same, with Hanako eventually leaving the Sato sisters and me to ourselves as she heads back to her dorm room for a rest. For a while, only the barely audible sound from Lily's teacup and saucer can occasionally be heard as she slowly drinks. The silence is strained as Lilly and I wait for the elephant in the room to be addressed. So... Lilly dutifully puts her cup down, giving her sister her undivided attention. With Lilly and me on one side of the low table and Akita at the other, this almost feels like a judge passing down a verdict. I hear that you two are going out now? I glance sideways at Lilly to confirm her as the source of Akita's knowledge. She gives a gentle nod to Akita, which I mirror in affirmation. Deciding that this is the proper time and place to do so, and Akita being the closest figure to a parent Lily's had for much of her life, I bow deeply with my hands on the floor before me and my head very nearly the same. I'll take good care of your sister, Akita, I promise you. See, he's a lovely young gentleman. She must have heard my voice coming from a lower position than usual. I slowly bring myself back up, my eyes tentatively looking to Akita from under my brow. To tell the truth, I very much doubt my suited judge will raise any objections. She's very definitely the type to make her disapproval with others well known, something that lends her a measure of respect in my eyes. The old-fashioned kind, huh? Well, he's the kind of person I guessed you'd go for. I don't have a problem with it, and I wish you two the best. Even if I didn't like it, I couldn't really do anything anyway. I offer a nod of appreciation to her as Lily gives a small sigh of relief, likely more out of duty than any actual belief that Akira might have had any problems with us being together. I do wonder, though, how's the rest of the family taking it? Particularly the part residing at Yamaku. Have you told her? Smile turns to grimace as Akira grins downright evilly. Those closest know how to twist the knife best, after all. Putting up with it may be the best term for the situation. Don't you agree, Hisao? Yeah, that sounds about right. At least she's being reasonable about it. Good to hear. That girl can be a handful at the best of times. We sent a few messages back and forth during and just after the trip, and she was already busting my chops for seeing my boyfriend when we came back after leaving Hideaki for so long. She really does care for the little guy. I cast my mind back to Shizune's odd reaction after telling her about our relationship, but decide not to bring it up. It's no doubt simply born of their mutual antipathy, and Akira's comments only back that up. Well then, that's settled. Gotta get to work early tomorrow, so I'd better be off. She rises from the table with a grunt, her hand on her knee to push herself up. I just notice Akira's eyes lingering on Lily for a couple of seconds before turning away as she begins to take her leave. After she walks out the door, she stops and looks up thoughtfully before turning to us one last time. Oh yeah, almost forgot to tell you. Use protection every time. We have not. We have used protection 0 times. Sorry, I'm young and that's my fault. I gag violently on the tea in my mouth. Contrary to my own, Lily's composure holds perfectly as she seems entirely unfazed. I'm kind of impressed. We are. Don't worry. You're lying! Lily! You know we didn't. Atta girl. See yous. And with that, she turns and strides away, a hand held high as she disappears into the darkened hallway, closing the door behind her. The most reaction I can muster is flopping forward onto the table, completely drained of energy and truly exhausted by her. Lily's ability to hold her own against that suited devil is something I admire. I mean, that's her sister. I'm sure she's like super used to anything that her sister's done, or would do. She really is incredibly blunt. I don't think I'll ever be able to keep up with your sister's energy. As I feel Lily's soft hand come to rest on my own, I roll my head to the side to see her gently smiling. For a long time we simply sit beside each other silently. Given her unquestionably unusual height, she is pretty much exactly as tall as I am, probably a couple of centimeters higher if anything. Like this, she appears even taller. The feeling of her pale, soft hand against mine is a pleasant one, as is the sight of the thin, silken pajamas she wears showing her curves and collarbone. Scandalous. You do get on well, though, even if you do say that. I guess, you know, you two are a lot more alike than I first thought when I met you. Then it's a good thing I quickly stopped you from going after her, isn't it? Though she jokes about it, my assessment of my inability to keep up with Akira, either physically or mentally, was quite in earnest. Lily's slow-paced and ladylike, almost motherly, nature is perhaps the single thing that helped... Lily's slow-paced and ladylike, almost motherly nature is perhaps the single thing that helped me most in my first weeks at Yamaku. Come to think of it. Wait, since when are we using protection? Yeah, you lied! As I give a curious look to my side, Lily's cheeks puff out as she huffs at me. Unlike you, I remembered. The packet is in the cupboard next to the sink. Wait. You guys already didn't use it. Oh, she take the pill. So I'm not the only one of us that takes a pill. In hindsight, I feel rather thoughtless for not remembering it all and leaving it to Lily. Looking over to the cupboard she mentions, I notice again the knee-high piles of books around us that were here and the other times I'd visited. For the most part, they're lined up against the wall to give a little more room around the table. Why don't you get a bookshelf for your books? It's odd to see books just piled around, especially given that your room looks so neat and orderly otherwise. They're easier to find that way. I know exactly which pile each book is in. Wouldn't you still know that after putting each on a different shelf? That may be, but... So she's not immune to bouts of laziness after all. I thought she was perfect. I'm calling it off. I only want to have a perfect girlfriend. Thank you. You have so many of them, it's kind of a shame we can't share our book sets despite both of us reading so much. She gives a short giggle. Come to think of it, why do you order your books through Yuko? I imagine there'd be plenty of sites that you could order books in Braille from, especially in English Braille. There are a lot of text-to-speech programs too. She turns her head slightly away from me, which strikes me as somewhat surprising. I'm just not all that good with computers. I'm alright with typewriters and braillers, but that's about it. I guess that makes sense. Her tone almost makes me chuckle. She's a prideful person, so admitting something like that must be difficult. So Lily's a low-tech kind of person. Given her old-fashioned personality, it's not really a stunning surprise. I wouldn't worry about it. A lot of people aren't really that good with them, so it's not that unusual. That unusual? That unusual? Now she's even more depressed. It feels like I'm twisting the knife rather than healing her wounds. With a bit of squirming, I shuffle my way closer to her, tentatively putting one hand around her waist to hug her. I'm still not really used to this kind of physical affection, but Lily seems to like it. Oh. We're going straight into it. Lily smiles as she turns to face me, a kiss being the reward for giving in to her. She draws me in, brushing my upper lip with hers before pressing against both. This way, every one of my senses is filled with her. The barely perceptible scent of her hair, her taste as her tongue fleetingly touches mine, the tenderness of her lips, the image of her filling my mind, the total silence apart from her faint breath. What was I gonna say? Oh, Lily is very touchy. Very touchy Lily. She just out here. She's got the libido of an animal. She's got the libido of a rabbit. We may have kissed before, but even if this is more a kiss of simple affection than anything, it's still a new and pleasant sensation. Judging from her vivid blush as she pulls back, it's obvious she feels the same as I do. Even if we're entirely alone, it still feels a little embarrassing to open up to each other this much. If we take everything day by day, I think that would be for the best. Small steps, right? Yeah, just small steps. How you gonna say that after you done already freaking jumped to the bottom of the stairs? We have plenty of time to be together even after the school year is over. As long as we move together, I think everything will work out okay. Neither of us is going anywhere soon after all. For now, I'm just thankful for this small moment in time we can spend together. Oh. I'm gonna do another one. I don't know, 'cause I messed up. So we'll see. I stand unmoving in front of the door to the nurse's office for what feels like at least a dozen minutes or so. It's not like I never entered the small beige room before, nor is it because of any feeling of childlike anxiety over the visit. Wah. Maybe it's because the nurse's office is akin to a confessional, an admission that my body is flawed. The knowledge that such a fact is kept entirely confidential between the nurse and me hardly lessens the feeling. Remembering that the bell to signal the end of lunch break will sound soon, I give a sigh and open the door. The burden will stay with me just this while longer. Well now, if it isn't Nakai, good to see you. Or bad, I guess, considering that I'm a nurse. He gives a small laugh, amused at his little joke. I find his humor lacking. Lacking and somewhat off, but the fact that he can make light of a situation is perhaps comforting or at least distracting. His brief episode of entertainment over, he claps his hands together and gets down to business. I take a seat as he gestures for me to do so. I wish the classrooms had seats this comfortable. I can feel my mind wandering as my eyes quickly scan the room, distracted by all the small changes since I last came. Alrighty, so what brings you here? I haven't seen you often, so I assume your health's been good so far? Well, mostly. I see. His smile drops as I trail off. I feel slightly guilty about it. It's these moments where I can't rationally call myself normal that make me so reluctant to see the nurse. They're an admission that I'm different from everyone else. While I was on a trip during the long weekend, I had a few problems with my heart. He hums very seriously. How do you hum seriously? And nods as he does so, urging me to go on. I think it was as I was walking a fairly long distance. I think the right term for it is a heart flutter. I suddenly went weak at the knees and felt almost like I was having a small heart attack, but it passed in about half a minute. Even afterward, though, I felt pretty fatigued and nauseous. Not good. Not good at all. That was how many days ago exactly? Did you do anything unusual aside from exerting yourself before the episode? Were you taking your medication properly? The nurse switches from awkward jokester to serious health professional mode, rattling off questions, making notes, and calling up stuff on his computer. I tell him about my forgetting to take my pills that morning and the preceding evening. It was a stupid thing to do, but I can't change anything about it now except answer honestly and bite the bullet. His seriousness evolves into a frown, and the talk evolves into an instant checkup. Uh-oh. Well, you're gonna die tomorrow. Sorry about that. I finish buttoning up my shirt and again get motioned to take a seat in front of the nurse. Is this the first heart problem you've had since coming to Yamaku? I've had short pains in my chest before, just a couple of times, but they were more discomfort than anything like this. He leans back in his chair, briefly resembling a white-coated Poirot. That can't be Poirot. That sounds too much like pirate, and I think that they wouldn't say that he looked like a pirate in this serious moment. Poirot, as he mulls over the mysterious case of the heart flutter. Hold on. I gotta check the Google machine to figure out what the heck a Poirot is. I don't understand. This is just a guy with a little mustache. I don't understand. Is it this little mustache? Is that a Poirot? He doesn't have a little mustache. I don't know what this means. He leans back in his chair, resembling a white-coated Poirot as he mulls over the mysterious case of the heart flutter. Moving his lips from side to side to show he's thinking, his non-existent mustache wiggle. It is the mustache. He eventually comes to a conclusion. It must be a mannerism, but I don't know who that is. And I can't see mannerisms in pictures. Well, you survived it. That's always on a plus side. I blink at this one, then notice the nurse wearing his got you face. It's actually somewhat reassuring. I don't think he would crack jokes if things were really serious, so I keep silent and take my lumps. I'll have to talk with your doctor, but right now I suspect it's simply due to physical exertion. Have you been keeping up with regular light exercise like I directed you to? I'll make sure to walk a reasonable amount every day. It's usually enough to work up a bit of a sweat, but then again, I'm not really as fit as I used to be. That should be enough then. The main thing to keep in mind is to do regular low-stress exercise, not short bursts of sprinting and such. I understand. Since leaving the hospital, I've been a lot more focused on my studies, partly to take my mind off not being able to do more physical things. It's good to hear you're coping well. Sudden lifestyle changes can be hard at the best of times, so I'm pleased to hear that you sound like you have everything in order. Almost everything, that is. Nevertheless, I want to keep a close eye on you for a while, just for observation's sake. Just to make sure things aren't going downhill, you understand? That's something I really didn't want to hear. Since coming to Yamaku, all I've wanted to do is live as normal a life as possible. Observation was one of the words I came to hate during my hospital stay. For so long I felt as if I could have just walked straight out of the hospital doors if not for that observation the doctors wanted so dearly. Sure, should I come in more often? He checks the calendar next to his computer, which seems to inflict on him a nasty case of furrowed brow. He spins back towards me after that. The summer holidays are a bit of a pain considering the timing. I'll check with your doctor to try and get a better handle on the situation and see how he wants to proceed, but I think you should just take things slowly and carefully for now. What you're describing doesn't immediately sound like a reoccurring event, but it won't hurt to slow down a bit for a while just to make sure. What should I do for today? Chill. He looks over my shoulder at a clock hanging over the door. I'd never have noticed it if I hadn't followed his gaze. It's near time for school to be over, so you may as well just leave early. He gives me a sly wink, making sure that I understand he's doing me a favor. Well, nurse's orders. Thanks. That's what I'm here for, after all. I know you might not want to hear this, but you can't ignore your condition. Don't hesitate to see me if you have any problems, or if you have anything you want to ask. Bye. He spins around and gets back to typing on the computer in front of him. I suppose I'll just read before waiting for Lilly by the gate, considering I don't have much else to do. Even as I leave, his words echo in my mind. My condition isn't something as limiting as many of the others here in Yamaku, and I don't want to burden Lilly with thinking about it. If I just live life normally and avoid any short, sharp shocks, I should be okay. I won't let my condition rule me. Lilly comes into view after the bells heralding the end of school day ring out. She says farewell to a number of her classmates, heading in the other direction before beginning her weekly trip to the convenience store. Afternoon, Lilly. The immediate warm smile and relaxed demeanor she assumes upon noticing my presence are unexpectedly welcome. Hello, Hisao. Good afternoon to you, too. She hesitates for a second, but eventually deigns to tilt her face forward and close her eyes. My lips meet hers with a measure of slight trepidation before we move off, hand in hand. The fact we're so close in height is somewhat useful at times, there being no need for either of us to turn our head upwards nor downwards in order to meet each other. It doesn't take much time to leave the noise of the other students far behind us. The tapping of Lily's cane in her free hand, the only sound to be heard. Silence, blissful silence, is all that greets us while we slowly talk in the setting sun's light that says walk. I think I'm coming to really like this town. The huge green hilly expanse, the trees everywhere, the somewhat rustic little buildings. So you've come to appreciate the tranquility of it as well? I think so. I come from a metropolitan city near Tokyo, so the quiet of this town really alienated me when I first arrived. After a while it became really nice though. I think I prefer it to the hustle and bustle of my home city now. Well, I prefer the quiet of such a rural town. Even when I first arrived, I suppose I had the advantage of growing up in a quiet area before I came. Hanako said the surroundings are very pretty too. Lily may say such a thing quite easily, but each time she mentions how others describe sights around her as beautiful or pretty, I feel a little put off. I notice her expression becoming one of anticipation for some question or another. She always had a good sense for when someone's not saying something that's on their mind, so I may as well speak up. I was kind of wondering, how to put this. Do you ever regret that you can't see what things look like for yourself? It's just something I've been thinking about. She thinks carefully for a time. Do you ever regret that you can't hear people whispering on the other side of a room? I can only speak for myself, but the fact that I can't see is the only way I've experienced life. Just as I cannot do something you can't do something that I'm capable of. The fact that the world is made for those who are sighted can be a pain sometimes, but there are many, many people who suffer much more than I because of the way the world is. That does make sense, but still, it feels kind of bad to describe something that you can't experience to you. She tilts her head quizzically, as if I just said something that makes very little sense at all. But I can experience it. You just said yourself that you like this area because of the way the surroundings are. I like this area for the very same reason. Thanks to the fact that this is a small, rustic town surrounded by trees, it gives me some peace and quiet away from the din of at school and the bustle, not to mention the smells of the city. I suppose it would also be much like the home she shared with Akira as well. Her outlook on it seems pretty sensible, and I'm not surprised that she's got a much better handle on her particular condition than I do on mine. Just like how her coming from a location somewhat similar to Yamaku's surroundings let her become more acclimated in a shorter time, being born blind affected her stance, by her own admission. I should stop being so annoyed with myself over it, but I can't shake the feeling that I've depended on Lilly far too much, given the circumstances most have had to deal with in Yamaku. That makes a lot of sense. You're pretty good at explaining, as always. Come to think of it, where's Hanako anyway? She was with us for lunch. It seems she's busy studying. The exams are far from over, and she said she wants to do better this year than the last. While I admire her work ethic, she's really been trying to give us a lot of room alone recently. She's that type of person, I think. The kind that puts others' needs above her own at every chance. She's a sweet girl, even though so much has hurt her in the past. I don't know. I feel like it's only now that when she's less close to me than ever, that she's truly finding herself. It was thanks to you that she began to become more confident after all, not me. I take my hand from hers and gently place it on her head. The important thing is that you were there for her. I can't imagine what she'd be like without having found someone like you. That much became obvious while you were in Scotland. We're all still friends, so we've just got to have more faith in her. I think she'll become she already is a good person. And that much is thanks to you being there for her when she most needed it, just as you were there for me. It makes me feel a bit childish when you sound so wise. Well, I try. Are you doing anything on the weekend by any chance? Nothing that comes to mind. Why? Then how about a date on Sunday? It'd be something to do besides exam preparation. Countering my rapidly beating heart, she simply smiles and nods. That would be lovely. Where would you like to go? Her face suddenly changes to one of disapproval. You can't do that, Hisao. That's cheating. Do what? A gentleman should never ask a lady where to have a date. Oh. Her smile quickly comes back, assuring me that she's far from serious. Don't worry about it. I'll think about where we could go. I'll leave it to you then. I promise to decide on the date next, though. With our plans for the weekend made, the rest of the walk down the hill continues in silence. The prospect of that lasting for any length of time, however, is shattered as I catch sight of a familiar figure waiting for us, her hand held high. Oh, yo. Thank you, please come again. The change in temperature as I step outside from the convenience store sends a chill up my spine. It feels like summer's starting to wind down. Looking to my side, the same feeling seems to affect Lilly as well, though unlike me, she doesn't manage to hide the fact. Something I didn't realize at first was how physically delicate she is, even compared to the likes of Hanako. If I had to describe her, I'd have to say she reminds me of a China doll. Dang. Akira walks up behind her and gives her a couple of hard pats on her shoulder. Much to Lily's consternation, for a moment she looks as envious of my status as an only child as I am of their close relationship. They talk between themselves for a few moments as I sort out my bags. Their voice is too low for me to catch, but eventually they break off and we begin to walk back to the school. Sus, Akira. Feels good to be out of that damned office. You kids don't know how good you have it here. Kids. You two, then. Kids grow up so fast nowadays. You're not old enough to say that. I don't know. Being around Hideaki makes me feel damned old. He's so precocious, he reminds me of you when you were younger. He's a nice boy. It would be a shame if Shizune comes to have too much of an influence on him. Damn, that is a roast. You're just gonna drag her like that out in the middle of the street with your sister, her cousin? Akira gives an amused snort at her sister's antipathy. She really doesn't seem to regard it as anything to make a serious fuss about, treating it more like a childhood spat. She looks over to me, apparently only just remembering that I'm here, and gives a small grin as she reaches towards her back pocket. You did not just give him a condom. What is it? Just a sec, let me dig it out. After quite some difficulty, she manages to retrieve her black leather wallet from her back pocket, quickly fishing out what looks to be a folded square of paper. With Lilly all but unaware of what's happening, Akira unfolds the scrap and hands it to me. Oh, okay, it's not a condom. It is dinner. An old photo of what looks to be younger Lilly and Shizune. Is she missing a tooth? Lily's missing a tooth! Operating a noodle stall with some other girl in the background. She looks vaguely familiar, but I can't quite pinpoint why. Is that Akira? What is it, Akira? I think you know. Lily mulls over this for a few moments, but before realization dawns on her. Akira, you really needn't. It's fine, isn't it? Besides, it's like the only photo I have of you two since you entered Yamaku, where you're not at each other's throats. I look back down to the photo in my hand. It does seem strange to see Lily and Shizune working together so diligently without any sign of animosity. If the photos of them during Yamaku's festival, that means it must have been taken 1 or 2 years ago. Do I know her? Wait, is that Yuko? In other words, the time when they were both in student council together. Who's the girl in the back? She looks kind of familiar. Ha! I knew you wouldn't recognize her. It's Misha before she went and dyed her hair pink. Whoa! Misha! Wait, she doesn't have the drills. She doesn't have the drills. Have her eyes always been brown? I feel like I'm being deceived. That's Misha? No way. Why do I keep doing this? It feels extremely strange to see Misha without her so very distinctive hairstyle. Judging from Akira's tone, she doesn't take favorably to Misha's idea of fashion. I suppose the fact just accentuates how odd the situation looks. To think they were so friendly in the past. I wish I could do something to mend their relationship. That is not your job, Hisao. You're being very quiet, Hisao. It just feels kind of strange to see you all so friendly like this. Lily moves to say something, but stops herself. In the end, this isn't a matter for me. It's between Shizune and Lily and nobody else. True? Wow, Hisao, you're so smart. Things change, unfortunately. I hand the photo back to Akira, who sighs as she folds it up and slides it back into her wallet. A little memory quietly hidden away to be pulled out again sometime later. Yeah, that they do. Initially, I think Akira's reaction to be simply in response to the situation between Lily and Shizune, but she looks oddly glum compared to what I'd expect. Lily's expression has clouded as well. What's wrong? It's just that I'll be going to Scotland fairly soon. You're leaving for Scotland again? For a long moment, Akira looks surprised. It's an ill-fitting expression for her. After a glance at Lily, she turns back to me as if she'd never done so. Yeah, in a couple of weeks I'll be leaving for Inverness to work at the company's headquarters. It's a pretty big jump in corporate position, and it's not a chance that's going to come again. So Akira's going to leave Japan on what seems to be a permanent basis. I can't help feeling that my assumption that we could all happily while away our days having fun in this isolated little world is coming to an end. It's unsettling. I look at Lily, mildly surprised that she hasn't told me such a thing despite usually being so forthcoming. She continues to walk with her face fixedly pointed ahead. I can't read her expression, nor can I even guess what's on her mind, which is discomforting given how it's usually easy for me to do both. It reminds me of the time we met at the Shanghai, just before what could be called our first date. At the time, all I could do was comfort her without knowing the cause, and now it feels no different. As we finally reach the school dormitories once again, there's a somewhat awkward silence. I don't think I'm the only one who feels it. See you tomorrow then, Lily. Bye, Akira. Good night, Hisao. See you. And with that, they walk to the female dormitories. Opening the door to the male dormitories, I stop and look back at them just moments before their figures disappear behind the heavy wooden door. That was a strange moment when Akira said she was leaving. While that wasn't the first time when my thoughts regarding my new life have been called into question, it's perhaps the first time to do it quite so profoundly. I still don't know what to make of Akira's reaction, much less Lily's. The night's chill reminds me to get back to my room before I catch something, my bags pulling down on my arms with seemingly redoubled weight. If nothing else, I have a date with her set up for the weekend. I just need to stop overthinking stuff and get on with things as they are. The exams are still ongoing after all, and with the trimester's end and the summer holidays beginning soon, there'll be plenty to keep me busy for a while. As I give a yawn and retreat inside, my thoughts turn to what Lily will decide to set as a location of our weekend rendezvous. Oh, fancy. Alright, well, I guess we have skipped to the date that Lily has decided. And, this went on a bit longer than I had anticipated, but we have learned many things. Akira's gonna be leaving Japan, and Lily's gonna be very alone. It seems like Lily really likes family, and has, some pretty, what's the word? She likes family. And, the fact that she is ostracized from all her family is really getting to her, She doesn't have Shizune, Akira's leaving. I guess she could still talk to Hideaki, but she seems really sad. And now she's gonna only have Hanako and me, and Hanako is kind of moving on to stuff too, so I feel bad for Lily. She's gonna be with her by herself, with no support. I guess she has friends in her classroom, but I don't know if those friendships are worth any, I don't know if they're worth writing home about or anything. But, yeah, we will go on this lovely little date next time, in the next video.